Hello and welcome to the Podquest of Bread. My name is Henry Conley. Tonight, let's talk about felonies. This morning, in a now hidden tweet, Donald Trump took to Twitter to yet again encourage his cult in North Carolina to go to the polls and commit voter fraud. Donald Trump tweeted, North Carolina, make sure your ballot counts and sign and send it in early. When the polls open, go to your polling place to see if it was counted. If not, vote. Your signed ballot will not be counted because your vote has been posted. Don't let them illegally take your vote away from you. Twitter was quick to put a mask over the tweet, advising users that the tweet, quote, this tweet violated the Twitter rules about civic and election integrity. However, Twitter has determined that it may be in the public's interest for the tweet to remain accessible. Now, North Carolina Statute 163-275, Section 7 declares certain acts declared felonies. Any person who shall, in connection with any primary, general, or special election held in this state, do any of the following acts, things declared in this section to be unlawful, shall be guilty of a Class 1 felony. It shall be unlawful, and it goes on to say in Section 7, for any person with intent to commit voter fraud to register or vote at more than one precinct or more than one time, or to induce another to do so in the same primary or election, or to illegally vote at any primary or election. Through this tweet, the president is encouraging his cult to commit voter fraud. Since the mail-in ballots won't be counted until after the polls close, the poll workers will have no way to verify whether someone's mail-in ballot was counted. It should also be understood that a poll worker's job is to verify voter registration and assist those who don't know how to cast their ballot or have disabilities which cause them to require assistance. This puts Trump's loyal followers in a position where they may attempt to, or even will, vote in person as well as vote in as mail-in vote, and end up in casting a second ballot. Now, I have a couple things to say about this, and I have a couple little suspicions that I have when it comes to this whole situation. Donald Trump in this is, one, putting forth a great deal of effort into getting his cult and his followers to commit a felony. He's doing this for a reason, and it has everything to do with his reelection. It has everything to do with him maintaining power, and it has everything to do with him maintaining the office of the presidency of the United States. Now, reading what Trump has asked his followers to do, reading what Trump has asked his supporters to do, I can deduce a few things. And before I get to those, I want to talk about a couple things that are a little ironic. Donald Trump has spent a considerable amount of time telling his supporters and telling his base that mail-in voting is ripe for fraudulent elections. He has spent a considerable amount of time telling his followers not to vote by mail, but to vote in person. And suddenly he is shifting his message to one of vote by mail and then go check and vote in person if they can't answer it. Now, of course, on Twitter, there were a lot of his supporters defending these words. There were a lot of his supporters saying that if you vote by mail, then you go in person and you vote, that it's not voting a second time, and that it's not violating any laws or statutes, and that it's not going to be a felony and you'll be perfectly fine. To those supporters, I have something to say to you. Understand that by voting by mail and then in turn going to your polling location to cast a second ballot is in fact voting a second time. It is in fact a felony, a Class 1 felony, and it will in fact have your voting rights completely removed from you. Now, Here's why. If you go to the polls and you ask any poll worker if your mail-in ballot has been counted, if your mail-in ballot has been actually put into the system, besides the fact that they won't be counting these things until after the polls close, here's another reason that those poll workers will not be able to answer that question. They have a very basic job. When you get there, their job is to verify that you have registered to vote in the state you are voting in. And if you need assistance or need to learn how to vote, they are there to do that. They are not there to verify whether you have in fact mailed in a ballot. They are not there to verify, say they did count the ballots. They are not there to verify whether your ballot has actually been counted. They are literally there to assist in the democratic process that is voting. That's it. Plain and simple. Nothing more. So if you get to a polling location and you say, was my ballot counted? They are not going to be able to answer that question. Then you are going to, following Trump's logic, decide to vote in person and commit a felony. Now, why does Donald Trump want you to do this? Why does Donald Trump want you to go and vote a second time? I have a couple theories. My first theory has everything to do with Trump looking at the current polling in battleground states. His campaign looking at the current polling in battleground states. And this is going to sound completely contradictory to what I was saying just a few weeks ago about the Biden-Trump race. And that is this. A couple weeks ago, the polls were closing in on each other. They were both nearing that 50%. There was no real spread. But when you look at battleground states now, there is a strong lean towards Biden. So in theory, and what I'm thinking the Trump campaign is thinking about doing here, is setting up the next battle, the next fight. What I think they're planning to do is get ready for the next phase of things. So here's the first thing that we can deduce. Donald Trump has already said that he is not going to accept the results of the election if he loses. He's going to contest the results. He's going to challenge them. He's not going to take it. He's not going to take that L. He's just not going to do it. So what I think he is going to do is use the whole fraudulent election argument by scapegoating the double voting onto the Democrats and saying that the Democrats were the ones who voted twice and the Democrats tried rigging this election and tried rigging it for Joe Biden. The Democrats are the ones that tried making this election fraudulent and undemocratic. And then he will use that as a reason to not leave office. He will use that as a reason to contest the vote, to contest the election all the way up to January 20th. And we'll talk about that in a second. Another reason that I think he is doing this is because he recognizes that the poll workers at the polling locations are already going to be extremely stretched thin as they navigate all the COVID-19 prevention measures that they will have to navigate within the polling locations. So if he happens to have a bunch of people showing up to North Carolina polls and other key battleground state polls asking if their mail-in vote was counted, he's now stretching those polling workers even further. And by stretching them even further and by causing a little more havoc within their ballot or their polling locations, suddenly he has another argument. Were they actually checking everyone's voter registrations? What if someone voted for someone else? Ooh, man, this gets really interesting. By creating havoc and creating problems within the polling locations, Donald Trump suddenly has yet another argument and another reason not to accept the results of an election. Now, this is just a theory. This is just an idea. This is just the only reasons I can logically think that Donald Trump would possibly want people to go and vote twice. It's the only reason I could think that he possibly could want people to do this, to sow the seeds for havoc, to sow the seeds for mass disturbances, to sow the seeds for a battle in court. And with that being said, here's my fear. We're probably going to see something happen in the United States that's never happened before. We're probably going to see a moment occur that we've never had, where a election and the results of said election are contested all the way up to January 20th, 2021. And when the new president, or Donald Trump, God forbid, is being sworn back in or sworn in, I have a feeling that we are going to see something occur that's never occurred, where the Speaker of the House assumes the office of the presidency until the election is no longer contested. Until the election is no longer contested, we will have someone, more than likely Nancy Pelosi, as president. That's my theory. That's what I'm thinking is going to happen. I think we're about to see a monumental moment in history. Not only where the president of the United States refuses to accept the results of an election, creates situations where many of his key supporters are now charged with felonies, creates situations where he refuses to leave the people's house, but also creates a situation where the Speaker of the House is sworn in as the President of the United States until such time that the election is determined and the results of the election are determined. That's what I see coming down the pipeline. Because, remember, folks, fascists seek to retain power. They don't seek to voluntarily step down from power, and they will do everything they can to keep that power, up to and including sacrificing your vote for a felony charge. Now, to anybody that might watch this video and happens to maybe stumble upon it due to YouTube algorithms or across my Periscope streams or my Twitch streams or even onto the Facebook page, if you're a Trump supporter, just listen to me for a second. If you've made it this far, just please listen to me. I'm going to try and kind of have you think about something here. If Donald Trump is willing to risk your right to vote, to risk you getting a felony just so he can stay in office, can you imagine the other things he's lied to you about? Can you imagine the other things that he has fooled you into believing? Can you imagine the other things that he is fooling you with? Think about that. If he's willing to risk you getting a felony, if he's willing to risk you getting charged with a crime, also he can stay in power. Imagine what else he has fooled you into believing and thinking and saying. So when you go to the polls, do a big favor. If you've mailed in your ballot, trust that your ballot has been mailed in. It will be counted. That's a part of the system. You can track that. North Carolina has a website. A lot of the states have a website for tracking this. And if you're going to the polls to vote, please just do it properly. Don't allow Donald Trump to fool you into mailing in a ballot and then going and voting in person. Don't allow Donald Trump to fool you into committing a crime. Don't allow Donald Trump fool you into committing a felony also he can retain power. Anyway, have a beautiful night. Stay beautiful, humans.